This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
President Xi Jinping honors key individuals and groups in China's poverty eradication campaign. Ghana prepares to roll out coronavirus vaccination program next week after COVAX deliveries. And 1 year on, South Sudan's unity government still struggles to end conflicts. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe, also coming up this hour. In business, Zimbabwe's economy is projected to grow by 3.1% this year. And in sports, Sean Maker looking to end South Africa's 2-decade wait for swimming medal. The Chinese government has just held a ceremony in Beijing marking China's eradication of extreme poverty. President Xi Jinping presented awards and certificates to role models and groups in the battle against poverty. Based on the current threshold, nearly 100 million rural impoverished people have been helped out of poverty. 832 poor counties as well as 128,000 poor villages have all been removed from the poverty list. President Xi hailed the country's achievement in eradicating extreme poverty as a miracle that would go down in history.
We have created a China model for poverty reduction, and we've made great contributions to global poverty reduction. Based on the current poverty standard, 770 million rural people have been lifted out of poverty in China since reform and opening up began. And according to the international poverty line set by the World Bank, China accounted for 70% of the world's total, which were lifted out of poverty. China achieved the poverty reduction goal set by the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development 10 years ahead of the deadline.
CGTN's Yo Yang joins us live now from Beijing. Yo Yang, give us the highlights of President Xi's speech as China celebrates the eradication of extreme poverty.
Yes, China held a ceremony in the capital Beijing to honor those who contributed to battle against poverty. President Xi Jinping delivered a keynote speech saying a total of 100 million rural residents were lifted out of extreme poverty from 2012 to 2020, and more than 130 poverty-stricken counties shook off extreme poverty over the same period. Over the past 4 decades of reform and opening up, President Xi said more than 700 million people were lifted out of extreme poverty in China. But to build a moderately prosperous society, President Xi said improving the lives of rural residents is a key. He said the country should now focus on vitalizing rural areas. Also at today's gathering, the country honored individuals, committees and organizations who made outstanding contributions to the battle against poverty. Most of the individuals are ordinary people and colleges working on the front lines. And also academicians and educators who have also contributed to improving rural education were awarded. As for the villages and associated organizations, many achieved remarkable results in the fight against poverty. That includes the State Grace Tibet branch, which ensures electricity to rural areas there, and also awarded with Mingning Town, known for its outstanding work in its program to relocate rural residents so they can enjoy a better life. That's all from me. Back to you.
Oh, thank you for that, Yo Yang, reporting live for us in Beijing. So what are the lessons for Africa? Let's bring in Dr. David Munyai, an international relations and foreign policy expert. He is also the co-director, University of Johannesburg Confucius Institute. He joins us via Zoom live from Johannesburg. Dr. Munyai, what's your take on President Xi's speech on China poverty alleviation journey?
I think this is one of the greatest miracle in our modern time. China has managed to resolve the crisis of poverty, particularly in the rural area, with 1.6 trillion yuan injected. It demonstrated that the unity of purpose at the national, provincial, as well as county level, it helps with good policies, massive infrastructure development, and the involvement of the private sector. Combined, I think, all these efforts with the willingness of people on the ground to work together to achieve this wonderful miracle that Africa should emulate and work very hard in doing the same.
And how can African nations leverage the lessons learned from China's progress on eradicating extreme poverty?
I think what Africa is required to do urgently is to have good policies at a national level and ensure those policies are implemented. Oftentimes, African countries have good policies, but unfortunately, they don't get implemented. There's constant changing of government, conflicts in other areas, as well as massive shortage of education in terms of skills, bottlenecks in infrastructure. So if Africa could deal with that, learning the manner in which China did in coordinating all these aspects, I think there's a better chance for most African countries to uplift their people from poverty. And the role of governing parties, I think it's quite critical. The Chinese Communist Party has played a critical role combined with government officials, and all this require thorough thinking and research where a government official listen to those with the knowledge in the field of development.
You know, I'm really glad you mentioned the good policies that African countries have, but when you look at the reality on the ground in most African countries, what is making it so difficult to eradicate extreme poverty in the continent?
I think what we did as Africans is in the post-Uhuru, post-independence, was to inherit a colonial setting where in urban areas there is a form of a development that it does not relate to the countryside, and the lack of linkages in terms of building infrastructure and ensure that you have all the prerequisites of development, good education system, and ensure that it uplifts those who are worst affected by poverty, and have a different kind of interventions, a legal one, and in ensuring that you relocate people in areas where the government can provide services. So as it stands, the challenge we have in West Africa is compounded by COVID and Ebola are currently confronting the continent, is that our leaders tend to leave it to people on the ground without necessarily making serious intervention in healthcare as well as education.
All right, thank you very much for those insights, Dr. Munyai. Dr. David Munyai, live for us in Johannesburg. As the Communist Party of China prepares to celebrate its centenary, the nation is celebrating its victory in eliminating extreme poverty. Yo Yang tells us how China achieved its goals in 2020 and what challenges lie ahead.
100 million rural residents have escaped extreme hardship in China, with more than 830 poverty-stricken counties shaking off poverty by the end of 2020.
Over the past 40-plus years of reform and opening up, more than 700 million people in China have been lifted out of poverty, contributing to more than 70% of the global reduction in poverty. That's a really great achievement.
To reach the goal, a variety of policies have been issued by both the central and local governments. From 2016 to 2020, the central government increased the funds to eradicate poverty by an additional 20 billion yuan every year. That's an extra $3 billion annually. In 2020 alone, total funds to eradicate poverty reached nearly 150 billion yuan. That's more than $22 billion. Since late 2012, China has sent more than 3 million cadres to impoverished villages to fight poverty on the front lines.
I've been to Shanxi Province, Mizhi County several times. The county's party secretary comes from PetroChina. He shared his resources experience about the construction of the county. For example, the county's infrastructure has developed very well. They've also set up e-commerce platform to sell their agricultural products.
The country has also put forward many targeted measures to eradicate poverty. These include developing local industries, setting up microfinance programs, as well as establishing online platforms to sell agricultural products.
China has also put forward a relocation program helping to move people living in remote areas to the regions which are more suitable to live. 10 million of China's residents have participated in it. Local governments are helping them to find jobs in and around resettlement sites. This program provides people more opportunities to expand their view and enjoy new lives.
In recent years, China has also shared its experiences in poverty eradication with other countries and international organizations, including Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and the United Nations.
Economic opportunities, diversification, new drivers of growth, plus targeted programs is what makes the Chinese program so successful.
China has been extremely good in understanding who the poor were and why they were poor. And understanding that, they were able to develop tailored measures that could address poverty.
For the future, one notable sign that China State Council's leading group office of poverty alleviation and development will be replaced by a new organization called the State Bureau of Rural Development. And this may indicate that the country's next focus could be the revitalization of rural areas. Yu Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
In Uganda, the State Minister for Foreign Affairs has hailed China's progress in alleviating poverty. Henry Oriem Okello says it serves as lessons that other countries can benefit from.
I don't think any country has managed to achieve and remove so many citizens out of poverty as China has in a very short time. I think that the success of China cannot be matched by any country in the world. The leadership of China has been very focused on its agenda to remove people from poverty. The targets have been set, the targets have been met, and we've seen how more and more Chinese have been removed from poverty and being brought into the working class and the financial money economy, and being able to live a good lifestyle, good housing, good income, access to medicine, access to good schools. These is unimaginable to happen in another country, and we think this is a very good story of China, which should be told to Western countries rather than spending lots of time bashing China and demeaning China, demonizing China, and putting all these negative things about China.
In Nigeria, gunmen have killed 36 people in two separate attacks in Nigeria's Kaduna and Katsina states. The violence comes just one day after suspected Boko Haram militants fired rocket-propelled grenades on residential areas in the country's north. Authorities say explosive devices also knocked out power and water in the city of Maiduguri, the birthplace of Boko Haram. The Boko Haram insurgency has displaced nearly 2 million people and left 36,000 dead over the past 10 years. Still in Nigeria, the death toll has risen to 16 from the Tuesday militant attack in Nigeria's Maiduguri city in the volatile northeast Borno state. Among the dead are 9 children who were playing in a football field. 4 died instantly, while 5 died from injuries. The fighters used rocket-propelled grenades combined with sporadic shooting. They reportedly emerged from nearby Boboshe village, a known enclave of militant group Boko Haram. However, Boko Haram is not the only active jihadist group in that region. The Islamic State West Africa province that emerged in 2016 also operates in the area. The violence has spread to Niger, Chad and Cameroon, prompting a regional military coalition to fight the insurgents.
A total of about 60 persons were injured. Among them, 10 have died, and it was as a result of a mortar bomb that has been fired by the members of the insurgents. We experienced such similar situation exactly 1 year ago in Maiduguri town. The only possible solution is for us to deploy technology and then detect any incoming persons into the town with a view to having the populace.
When it was happening, my place of work was close by. I just saw something red coming and it fell, knocked many and killed many people. Everybody was distressed. The only possible solution for us is to pray.
The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has prohibited foreign diplomats from traveling outside the capital Kinshasa without advance notice. The decision was made after the killing of the Italian ambassador, his bodyguard and driver in the eastern part of the country. CGTN's Christo Chamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The decision follows a security meeting between the DRC President Felix Tshisekedi, the country's security officials and foreign minister. Under the new directive, ambassadors and heads of diplomatic missions are not allowed to leave Kinshasa without informing the head of the foreign ministry. The foreign envoys will also have to report to the authorities in the areas they visit before making field trips. The move follows the killing of the Italian ambassador Luca Attanasio and 2 others in an attack on a World Food Programme convoy near the eastern city of Goma. The DRC government has sent security officials to the area to investigate the incident. Authorities say they will do everything within their power to find the ambassador's killers. Several rebel groups in eastern DRC have been killing civilians over the past 2 decades. The UN says the illegal exploitation of minerals in eastern DRC has fueled conflict in the region. Chris Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Ghana is now preparing to begin COVID-19 vaccinations after it became the first nation to receive the vaccines from COVAX, an initiative to ensure equitable distribution of vaccines. The next country in Africa to get the COVAX facilitated vaccines will be Cote d'Ivoire, whose shipment is expected to arrive tomorrow. Our UN correspondent Liling Tan reports.
The Emirates Sky cargo plane touched down Wednesday morning in the Ghanaian capital of Accra, carrying long-awaited precious cargo from Mumbai.
We're really happy because they're going to benefit a large number of beneficiaries in Ghana.
Being unloaded are 600,000 doses of Oxford AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccines, acquired and delivered by UNICEF for the largest vaccine supply, procurement and distribution endeavour in history. But getting this shipment here was anything but direct.
It happened that the day that everything lined up, we didn't have any availability on flights. And one of the air carriers that we're in discussions with said that they would divert a plane actually from Shanghai to Mumbai to pick up the vaccine doses, take them on to Dubai, where then the doses were actually bundled with the injection equipment, the safety boxes, syringes, and then fly them on to Accra. So this is maybe like one flight gives you a microcosm of the logistical challenges.
The vaccines in this first tranche were manufactured under license by the Serum Institute of India, one of many crucial partners in an effort to deliver at least 2 billion doses to low and middle income countries by the end of 2021. More than half of those doses slated for poorer nations at no cost to their governments.
So this is a global pandemic and one that knows no borders, and certainly leaving behind the global south, those countries that haven't been able to access vaccines on their own, actually leaves everyone exposed because we live in an interconnected world.
Conceived early in the pandemic, the COVAX facility joins forces between major global health organizations and UN agencies and more than 190 participating countries and regions. The next stop on the COVAX vaccines itinerary, Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire on Friday. Liling Tan, CGTN, New York.
South Sudan's parties to the 2018 peace deal insist it will fully be implemented despite the delay in setting up structures for a new government. It's now a year since the formation of the unity government began, but reforms in the judiciary are yet to begin and Parliament is also not yet reconstituted. CGTN's Patrick Oyet tells us more.
A peace deal signed in 2018 by 5 groups dictates that a new government comprising all groups be formed to run for 3 years from 2019. But delays in completing unification of the various armed groups meant formation of the new unity government only began in 2020. Disagreements over who should take which political positions followed, and up to now, some states still have no governments. The parliament is yet to be reconstituted. However, South Sudan's government says total peace will soon return to the country.
We are moving forward, but with those achievements like formation of the state government that you have seen, the formation of the national executive, and the cantonment of forces, the training of forces.
In South Sudan's capital, Juba, life is returning to normal for many after years of civil war, but some are concerned about the peace process.
Implementation has been slow. Since the signing of the peace agreement in 2018, South Sudanese become happy. They expect they will join a new life, but unfortunately, they have been disappointed by the parties to the revitalized peace agreement, simply because there is no trust among themselves.
All of us, government and we citizens, we are part of this agreement. And if we are part of this agreement should not be owned by politicians only, neither should be owned by citizens only. But through our collaboration together, we can shape this country forward as we want.
The 2018 peace agreement provides for a permanent constitution-making process, which is also yet to be completed. The reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission, a body mandated to monitor the implementation of the South Sudan's peace deal, says the silencing of the guns is the major achievement of the 2018 peace deal. However, South Sudan's government warns that unless the unified forces that came from various armed groups are redeployed, the situation will remain volatile.
Until today, we have 2 forces under 2 different commands. And that is risky. You need to have 1 army in the country under 1 commander-in-chief to maintain, to keep the gun silence and maintain this permanent ceasefire.
The government says it lacks funds to facilitate graduation of trained forces and their redeployment. Lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic is causing more delays, making many here lose hope of lasting peace returning to the country soon. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Tanzania has launched its first highway interchange. President John Magufuli, while officiating the event in Dar es Salaam, said the new infrastructure will help ease traffic jams. The interchange is also expected to reduce economic losses due to transportation delays. CGTN's Joy Kiruki Juma reports.
The Ubungo interchange in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, now renamed Kijazi Interchange. President John Magufuli, while officiating the launch, said the change in name was in honor of Chief Secretary and Ambassador John Kijazi, who died recently.
Kijazi has done great work in the construction sector here in the country. All these projects in Dar es Salaam, market projects, bus terminals, and so forth. He has the head of the Chief Secretaries in Council. Therefore, in one way or another, he has contributed much to the achievement of these projects.
The project by the China Civil Engineers Company was started in 2017. The interchange is one of several infrastructure projects expected to ease transport challenges in the city.
As we promised this year, we will construct about 10 bridges in Dar es Salaam to reduce jams and accidents. You have been witnessing a great transformation in the streets in the last 5 years. We have spent more than 1 trillion shillings to do the changes in Dar es Salaam streets. Here we are constructing an 8-way road. Others are saying it is too big, but that is Dar es Salaam.
Tanzania has also embarked on infrastructural projects aimed at easing transportation of people and goods to other regions. Joy Keruki Juma, CGTN.
Taxi driving in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, is not only typically reserved for men, but can also be dangerous in a city where militants regularly carry out attacks. However, a young Somali woman has defied odds by becoming one of the few female taxi drivers in the capital. Asha Mohammed hopes to challenge stereotypes and contribute to changing the minds of her countrymen about the role of women.
Asha Mohammed crisscrosses Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, ferrying clients to their destinations. She's been a taxi driver for the past 1 year. Her career choice was driven by passion, but also necessity after she divorced her husband. With earnings of up to $40 a day, she can comfortably take care of her 2 children and mother.
When I was little, I was passionate about cars. I wanted to become a pilot one day. I didn't think of becoming a taxi driver in the beginning, but when the taxi company Recab was started last year, I decided to join them, especially because there weren't any women drivers at the time. I saw an opportunity.
The 19-year-old driver says clients are often caught off guard when they climb into a taxi and see a woman behind the steering wheel. This narrative is slowly changing. Some now prefer female taxi drivers, saying they drive safely and arrive on time. However, only 3 of Recab's 2,000 taxis in Mogadishu are driven by women.
The number of women taxi drivers was very low because of safety concerns. But since we launched the company, we are recruiting more women.
Women rights in Somalia are still low on the country's list of priorities. A 2012 report showed Somalia among the bottom 4 on a United Nations Gender Equality Index. The report said Somali girls are given away in marriage very young, and violence against girls and women is widespread. As Asha moves around the streets, she hopes she can break down barriers. Chao Mohono, CGTN.
Coming up in business news, Zimbabwe's economy is projected to grow by 3.1% this year. And the Biden administration revamps its supply chain.
Every year, approximately 400 million tons of plastic is produced, and about 40% of that is single use.
79% of that is not recycled, it's not turned into energy, it's just going into landfill or into the environment in some way.
With the global focus on plastic pollution and my eldest son Tristan studying marine biology, I wanted to get involved and see for myself the true extent of the pollution in our region.
We're on our way!
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Zimbabwe is forecast to expand by 3.1% this year. That's far below the 7.4% earlier projected by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. This is largely attributed to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, subdued performance from minerals, and limited financial reserves. In its Zimbabwe 2021 Economic Outlook report, Morgan & Company says the resurgence of COVID-19, which has seen most companies closing or reducing business hours, will affect economic economic growth. Limited social safety nets and commodity-driven economy are just some of the factors that could also lead to subdued growth. Nigeria, meantime, is targeting to increase its tax revenue to 15% of GDP by 2023, and that's up from the current 6%. The government is banking on a new Finance Act and tax reforms to achieve this goal. The outbreak of coronavirus combined with low oil prices have depleted government revenue and raised debt levels. CGTN's Deju Badmas tells us more.
Oil revenue essentially drives the Nigerian economy, and anytime the price of the commodity drops in the global market, Africa's largest economy catches severe cold. The government now says it is determined to fix the problem, fully diversify the country's revenue stream. Late last year, President Muhammadu Buhari signed a new finance bill into law, hoping that would help address the country's revenue challenge.
We have over 100 different amendments in the Finance Act 2020, amending like 14 different laws, including those that have to do with tax, fiscal responsibility and public procurement. But overall, I think technology and tax intelligence, based on the amendments in the Finance Act 2020, are the biggest areas of impact that we can make.
Nigeria has one of the lowest tax collection rates in the world. The country's tax to GDP ratio is a mere 6.1%. But with the new Finance Act, the government is aiming to drive up the figure to 15%. It's also increased VAT from 5% to 7.5%.
It will require a lot of connected efforts and collaboration by all levels of government, states, federal, local government, bearing in mind that our tax to GDP ratio is not just about the revenue collected at the center alone. It would also require harmony, if I may put it that way, between tax policy, tax legislation, as well as administration. But at the center of all of these are the core issues of why is it that Nigerians don't pay taxes.
The government is hoping to use technology to increase the level of tax compliance in the country. The Finance Act empowers the tax authorities to connect all business premises in the country to a central server from where all their transactions will be monitored to ensure the right taxes are paid. But a number of businesses have been resisting the move, and tax evasion is still an issue.
At the heart of it is the low tax morale, and that low tax morale is driven by the lack of trust in government. One big way to address the deficit in trust is more transparency. Communicate what you collect, communicate how you spend it, and demonstrate prudence, efficiency, and transparency in doing it. But if you can progressively sustain the reforms that are being made, then it's possible to get there, especially now using technology and tax intelligence to prevent evasion and aggressive avoidance.
Despite the challenges, the government says it is beginning to see a growth in tax collections. But its goal of driving up tax revenue to 15% of GDP by 2023 might be a hard target, as businesses in the country are still reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And experts have warned that recovery could actually take years. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
On to aviation now. Morocco's aerospace sector has seen some tough times due to the coronavirus pandemic. Official figures show that exports fell by nearly a third to $1.3 billion in 2020 from $1.9 billion in 2019. This was, of course, due to reduced air traffic, but the sector has started to recover, thanks in part to manufacturers shifting towards medical equipment. CGTN's Terry Wangari has the details.
Morocco's aerospace industry has been comparatively resilient during the global pandemic. The sector has only shed 10% of some 17,000 jobs. Signs of recovery are apparent, with manufacturers diversifying into other high-tech engine areas and medical equipment.
Before COVID-19, a growth of 20% was recorded for several years. It is an interesting growth, a significant technological development. But as you know, with the arrival of the pandemic, air transport stopped abruptly, which was impacted by a domino effect in the entire industrial chain of aeronautics We have been affected by this pandemic, but when we compare with other regions of the world that operate in the sector, we have been much less impacted and we have been very resilient.
The companies least affected by the pandemic were those that had extended into producing equipment for other sectors such as medical equipment. One such company is SERMP, a Casablanca-based company that supplies parts to French aircraft engine maker Safran. It recently won approval from health authorities to make medical devices after producing ventilators and machines making face masks.
We have gathered all our efforts to design, develop and manufacture 100% Moroccan respirator. So it practically took us 1 month of development and 1 month of production. We have managed to gather all these efforts to create this respirator, which is today in the validation phase before the delivery to the Ministry of Health.
The automotive industry, which has topped Moroccan exports for the last 3 years, saw exports drop to $8.1 billion in 2020 from $9 billion the previous year. That and the loss of jobs prompted the group of Moroccan aeronautics and space industries to launch a plan aimed at boosting the competitiveness of the aerospace sector.
In parallel, we have also developed other products such as mask machines in partnership with Renault. These machines are to provide mask manufacturers with a Moroccan tool, also produced 100% locally. All these small experiences pushed us to now create a biomedical cluster, which will serve as a kickoff of a medical and medical devices industry in Morocco.
The Moroccan Aerospace Institute has played an essential role during this period of crisis, a very important role in protecting human resources and talents. And this is why we launched a program called New Opportunities that allows giving youth, some of whom were let go from their factories because of COVID-19, and allow them to diversify their education in a way that will enable them to be rehired either in the aeronautical industry or other industries, especially in the medical and biotechnical fields.
Following Airbus' recent announcement to make carbon-free aircrafts by 2035, Moroccan operators see an opportunity. With the industrial plan in place, Morocco's aerospace sector stands a chance to expand. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
The U.S. is taking a hard look at its supply chains. The COVID-19 pandemic and trade disputes have cut imports of some critical components. The new administration has put a high priority on solving that problem, and President Joe Biden has signed an executive order to review the country's supply chains, including looking at imports from China. Nathan King reports from Washington.
Holding up a small semiconductor, which, as we know, powers much of what we use. US President Joe Biden kicking off a 24-hour session on really focusing on what he called securing America's supply chains for the industries of today and tomorrow. There's a lot of similarity here between the concerns of the Trump presidency and the Biden presidency as well. There's going to be a review. This executive order essentially reviews key industries and key sectors over a 100-day and a year period. We're talking about the pharmaceutical industries. We're talking about semiconductors. We're talking about 5G, AI, batteries, the industries of tomorrow. And even though China wasn't mentioned, it's obvious that the US, having pioneered globalization supply chains in Asia, now may be regretting them.
The American people should never face shortages in the goods and services they rely on, whether that's their car, or the prescription medicines, or the food at the local grocery store. And remember, the shortages in PPE during the pandemic, that meant we didn't have masks. We didn't have gowns or gloves to protect our frontline healthcare workers. That should have never happened, and this will never happen again in the United States, period.
Executive orders don't change much, as we knew from the Trump administration, but there is legislation also underway in the US Congress that would basically incentivize the industries of tomorrow to be manufactured here in the US. Particular concern of the defense industry, of course, when it comes to rare earth metals. China is the main exporter and also compiler of those. Sometimes they're exported to China and sent back as well. The big question, I think, for the US generally and the world is the globalization of some of these key industries, which has benefited consumers in the billions and kept prices low. Can you really opt out of it, or can you try and cooperate around the world? Remember, the US still has tariffs imposed against China, still isn't part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, has not joined multilateral trade deals. We'll see if the Biden administration is any different. Nathan King, CGTN, at the White House.
Now, the Biden administration also wants to raise the federal minimum wage. It hasn't gone up since 2009, but a hike has been proposed in Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill. The proposed rate is more than double the current amount, raising some concerns. Peninah Karibe reports.
A majority of workers in the United States, many who work in the services industry, are paid by the hour. In 2017, roughly 1.8 million of them were earning wages at or below the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour. It's been stuck at that rate for 12 years, while the cost of living has been rising. Many cities and states have increased the minimum wage on their own, but others, mainly southern states, have not. U.S. President Joe Biden wants to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025.
No one working 40 hours a week should live below the poverty line. That's what it means. If you work for less than $15 an hour and work 40 hours a week, you're living in poverty.
Biden and other Democrats are hoping to include a minimum wage hike in the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package being negotiated in Congress. But some lawmakers, both Republican and Democrat, are opposed, saying higher wages will lead to job cuts.
According to a report by the Independent Congressional Budget Office, raising the minimum wage would have both positive and negative outcomes. On the positive, it would lift roughly 900,000 Americans out of poverty. On the negative, it would lead to roughly 1.4 million job losses.
The CBO says the majority of the job losses would be among younger, less educated Americans. The International Monetary Fund supports a wage increase to fight income inequality in the U.S., but says a jump from $7 to $15 is substantial and should be implemented slowly.
I think there is an argument to phase this in slowly to ensure that you kind of see what the effects are going to be of increasing this minimum wage in terms of effect on employment and in terms of effect on wages and jobs and so on.
Liberal-leaning Senator Bernie Sanders said he feels confident the wage hike will remain in the coronavirus relief bill.
We've got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of $15 an hour. That's what the American people want, and that's what I intend to do.
Biden has conceded the wage hike may not get enough support in Congress to make it into the coronavirus bill, and has vowed to pursue an increase through a separate piece of legislation. But that could prove even more challenging, as it would need 60 votes in the U.S. Senate to pass, a big hurdle with the Senate divided 50-50 on partisan lines. Peninah Karibe, CGTN, New York.
Australia's parliament has passed a new law aimed at forcing tech giants Google and Facebook to pay Australian media companies for content used on their platforms. The new legislation is part of reforms that could be replicated in other countries. Australia is the first country where a government arbitrator will decide the price to be paid by the tech giants if commercial negotiations with local news outlets fail. The legislation progress has been closely watched around the world as countries including Canada and Britain consider similar steps to rein in the dominant tech platforms.
Clearly, the larger media companies will be the initial beneficiaries of negotiations to effectively avoid the arbitration provisions in the code. Time will tell whether smaller players get access to significant funds. The legislation recognises a media organisation with a $150K a year turnover, so One of the real tests on how this code works will be the degree to which those smaller players are given the same sort of support as the larger players.
In a way, I get why they should be paid, but also, like, why would you pay for all the information that's happening out there? Like, we do need to know what's going on, and like, if they're getting paid, it might be limiting us because they don't want to pay as much. So I don't think they should. Yeah, because the news should be public.
I think that they should pay for it, absolutely. Because if you're using someone's information, using someone's products, using someone else's, brains, they should definitely be paying that person, because that's like kind of taking away from, that's just taking away from the smaller man. It's not fair. It's not fair.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Still ahead. 3 robots set new coronavirus safety standards in South Africa's hotel sector.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Let's head to South Africa, and staff at Hotel Sky in Johannesburg's wealthy Sandton district adhere to strict COVID-19 protocols, including wearing masks and physical distancing. Or, that is, except for Lexi, Mika and Ariel. These 3 do not follow the same rules because they are robots. Angela Kupla tells us more.
The hotel, which launched last year, is the first in Africa to use automated attendance. It's also one of the only few hotels that have begun operating in the middle of a pandemic.
It's a daunting task, opening up a new property, and especially during a COVID period. So it's been a tough challenge, but we're here to disrupt the hotel market. So here we are.
The hotel is unusual because guests get to meet artificial intelligence face to face as they enter reception. The 3 robots do everything that a concierge would do and more.
We gave them 3 personalities, Lexi, Ariel and Mika. We gave them the little Sandton fashionista personalities, and the idea with that is the concierge function. Ask them, get your feedback, do the room service deliveries, and all of the functions. Rate your stay, get the feedback, but also create a little bit of excitement in South Africa and obviously in the travel trade.
In a country with 32.5% unemployment levels, some are concerned that robots could take humans' jobs away.
Never. Now, keeping in mind we're in hospitality, you could never replace the human factor. The hero in our story will always be the guest, and the guest comes first. The robots, however, is adding a little feature and making the function of the staff so much more exciting.
The tech in this hotel doesn't end with the 3 robots. There are self-checking kiosks. There's an app with anything from checking in to room service delivery.
So it's all about the tech and making the guest experience so much better for our guests. So yeah, exciting times.
There have been questions about whether robots are going to take the place of human beings. That's not the case in the hospitality sector, but my job might be in jeopardy.
This is Angelo Coppola from CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Coming up in sports news. Shoemaker looking to end South Africa's 2-decade wait for swimming medal.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be